All right. Hello. Thanks for coming back to the Marketing Mindset. Here at AgencySparks, we intend to do this once every once every week on Wednesday mornings or Wednesday afternoon during lunchtime. And what we're trying to do is share some different marketing ideas with you and engage in a dialogue. So love to get your comments, your feedback as we go through this. This week at AgencySparks, we wrote a blog post with the goal of trying to create the perfect marketing brief. And there is no perfect marketing brief, but we decided to kind of try to give you some guidelines as to ways that you could write a perfect marketing brief. And I've used this analogy for some years of the Trojan War as a way to explain insight, objective, strategy, and tactics. And I found it to be a pretty good analogy. And so we went ahead and put that in our perfect marketing brief, the blog post, but we also created a template that you can access directly on our site if you go to agencysparks.com/blog. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit story about the Trojan War and how that's relevant to marketing. And then I'll talk a little bit about the perfect marketing brief. So for those of you who aren't fully brushed up on your Greek history, the Trojan War was a contest initially. And Quarrel had asked Zeus, the king of the gods, or the chief god, which of these three women was the most beautiful of all. And Zeus is no idiot. He decided that I'm not going to make this decision. I'm going to get a human to make the decision instead. So the three goddesses were Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena. And so Paris, who was just a simple human shepherd, all of the goddesses tried to bribe Paris and get him to pick them. And so Hera offered all the power to rule all of Asia, was her prize. Aphrodite offered the power for any woman to fall in love with Paris. And Athena offered the ultimate wisdom in all battles. And so who did Paris pick as the fairest of them all? He picked Aphrodite, who offered him true love. And his prize was that any woman in the world would fall in love with him. And so, of course, he ended up choosing Helen. Helen was the most beautiful woman in the world at the time. She fell in love with him immediately. She escaped with him to his home castle, his hometown of Troy. We've all heard of Helen of Troy, right? And Menelaus, who was Helen's husband, was not too thrilled with the whole thing. So Menelaus declared war on Troy. He was a Grecian, and he declared war on Troy and, sieged the city, and which was a walled city. And this clever Greek soldier named Odysseus came up with this idea. And the idea was to take build a large wooden horse and offer it as a gift to the gods. And they were going to put it outside of the Trojan castle. And we all know the rest of the story. They pull the horse in, and the guys all jump out at night. But at the time, Odysseus, they left behind a Greek soldier who said to the Trojans, his name was Sinon. He said, please, they abandoned me. They left me here with this horse. We built this horse as a tribute to the gods, specifically to Helen. And we made this actually to Athena, the goddess of war, so we could win this war. And they, of course, pulled the horse in. And the Greeks knew that the Trojans were going to pull the horse in. And of course, the Trojans ended up losing the war, and they ended up winning back Helen of Troy, right? So all of that to say, what is the insight? What is the objective? What is the strategy? And what is the tactic? And I work with a lot of students who immediately jump to the horse and they think that the horse is the strategy. So we're going to talk through what the insight, the objective, the strategy, and the tactic are. The insight in this story is that the Trojans are suck-ups. The Trojans wanted to honor the gods, and they basically took the work of the Greeks to try to, suck up to the gods. The objective, of course, was to win the war and win Helen back. All Menelaus ever wanted was just to get his wife back. The strategy is not the horse. It's never the horse. The strategy is to trick the Trojans. Trick the Trojans is the strategy. And then, of course, the tactic is the wooden horse. Okay. So insight, opportunists, suck-ups, objective, win back Helen of Troy, strategy to deceive the Trojans, and tactic is the wooden horse, the actual horse. So when you're thinking about putting together a marketing strategy, I think it helps to think about those four things and keep them in mind. So now going a little bit into the marketing brief, and I got some notes in front of me from our perfect marketing brief, so I'm going to glance down at them occasionally. But you need some background information on the brief, which would be things like, target launch date, budget, stakeholders, timeline, approvals, deliverables, those kinds of things. You need to give some background on the company and certainly background on the selling process and also the marketing challenge that you're trying to overcome. Mandatories versus nice to haves. What are the things that you absolutely have to include as part of the solution, and what are the things that are just nice to haves? And then we get into the who, what, by the way, the background part of it is sort of the who and doesn't really tell the why, what, and how. The why, what, and how is where we then fold in the insights, the objectives, the strategies, and the tactics. And often when you write a marketing brief, you can't be prescriptive about what those things all ought to be, but you certainly can give some suggested solutions that are important as mandatories and that kind of thing. When you're thinking about the objective, are there quantitative objectives? Are there qualitative objectives? In terms of strategy, is there a primary and a secondary? What problem are we solving for? What are the key messages that we need to convey as part of this? And then when we get to tactics, what tactics are we using? What channels are we using? So is this a tactic for Facebook or YouTube or for print or outdoor or TV? Or also is this what is the message? We already covered the message. And then the last piece is how are we going to measure success? So it's very important to put together the measurement as part of the plan. So those are the key components of a marketing brief, the perfect marketing brief. If you go to AgencySparks.com, I think it's perfect marketing brief. Then you can, and I'm not sure of the specific URL, I'll make sure to provide the specific URL in the notes. But essentially, if you go to the Agency Sparks blog and look for that blog post, we've got a link to the perfect marketing brief where you can actually get the template that we created. So anyway, I really appreciate your tuning in to Marketing Mindset. We're going to do this once a week, every Wednesday, and love to get your feedback. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.